Allô les meufs et les mecs. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another segment here on Project Purpose. For those of you who are new, we cover topics that relate to mental health, mental wellness, and education on a week-by-week basis. And today's discussion is on mental health. On the conversation on mental health, I want to talk about the frame that I use when I want to make sense of the events that take place in my life over time. Because I think sometimes we wonder and we can leave ourselves feeling victimized by the experiences that we've had. If it is the case that we're looking at it through a specific lens, right? Like the lens within which we look at things can really be what helps us push through those situations or what can really hold us back. And so the way that I look at life is that I think everything about life is about aligning to our highest selves. And I think that regardless of where we are in life, the things that happen in our lives are really just prompts, I believe, to enable us to align to our highest selves. And so these prompts are people. And so I talked a little bit on my TikTok about the 4 key profiles of individuals that I think are introduced into our lives and the reasons why they are. Now, I think that we will meet more people than the 4 profiles that I've listed, but I think these are the 4 core, like pivotal moment types of interactions that really do shift our perspective quite a great deal. And so I want to have a conversation because I think that it gives all of us hope and can give us all motivation. I think sometimes we really struggle to find meaning in life, and this is how I find meaning in life in every situation, regardless of whether it's a good time or a bad time. I always translate everything back to alignment. Also, that in aligning to our highest selves, we align to our calling as well. And so that clarity, I think, comes from the experiences that we go through, whether they're positive experiences or negative experiences. But this, I think, is a great frame to cultivate resilience, to cultivate grit and perseverance. And so without much more said, I'm going to go through those 4 profiles now. And so I'm going to start with like the super light and fuzzy, and then I'll get a little bit more into some of the harder interactions or the harder experiences that we face and what I believe to be the reason why. And of course, you can have a different opinion. This is just my personal view based on my life experience. This is how I have felt the events in my life take on a pattern. And so I'm sharing that pattern with you here now. The first thing that I want to say is I think all of us have a baseline frequency based on the environments that we're born into, right? So if we're born into, and I think the majority of us are born into some kind of trauma, but however that trauma is managed, if it's normalized, I think that that influences our frequency. I think that influences what it is that we emit. And I think what we emit is also what we attract, right? So we can only ever attract what our baseline is. And I think that if we're focused on growth, if we're focused on alignment, if we have that growth mentality, then we have the ability to adjust our own personal frequencies. And in adjusting our own personal frequencies, we shift and change the environments around us. So some people say like leveling up, not really understanding what that means. But for me, I think leveling up is a truly spiritual experience based on our own growth journey. And growth is not just about like extrinsic accomplishments. It's not just about achievements. It's about like our own inner sense of awareness, our own sense of compassion, our self-love journey, our self-healing journey. Like all of these things play into leveling up. I don't think it's easy. I don't think you can level up and like feel successful if you're not also leveling up like by way of your own personal growth as well. Like if you're cutting corners and you're finding success regardless, then I think for the most part, you don't necessarily have the character to carry the weight of what it is that you've successfully been able to gain. Sorry, not sorry. All of that to say, I do believe that for all of us who have pushed through hard things, and I think hard things is something we all have in common. And while we might not be able to relate with one another by way of the hard things that we've experienced, we can all say that we've all gone through our own version of hardship. And I am someone who firmly believes that if we hope through hardship, if in the hard things or the hard times that we're having like hope for a better reality. And I think that even if we're not going through hardship, if we're pushing towards something that is really difficult to attain, it doesn't necessarily need to be like we are born into hardship or we're experiencing hardship or experiencing challenges. It could be that our own goals are bringing about challenges and hard things and hard conversations and hard decisions. And I think that if you hope beyond what your reality is presenting to you, and I am someone who is perpetually faithful, I have perpetual hope. It does not matter how dire the situation, the circumstances are. I just always have hope that things will get better. It's just my personal disposition. But I do believe that it's not just like a disposition. It's not just an emotion. I think it's a frequency. I think that there's a frequency of hope that we emit when we're hopeful beyond the odds, right? And I am someone who has been hopeful through every phase and stage in my life, and it has pushed me through those stages and phases. And I think that it's only because I attracted what it was that my hope was calling for. And I think that hope is really a frequency that will be matched by people who come into your life who translate as that hope in a way that serves you. And sometimes those are people giving you a boost. Sometimes those are people giving you mentorship. Sometimes those are people opening doors for you. But all of it translates back to like you holding on to that hope, having that faith. And remember, faith is the substance of things unseen, right? So I think hope is fundamentally that. It is an energy that we emit that we then attract if it is the case that we allow ourselves to hope despite what people say, despite the naysayers, despite what people are doing, or if they're doing things otherwise, like despite all of the circumstances that should tell you not to hope. I think if you do not allow yourself to succumb to the negativity and to naysayers, then your hope will translate as to the reality that you want in a way that serves you. And I have to emphasize the part like in a way that serves you, because sometimes we're so caught up in getting the reality that we want that we start cutting corners and then we have it, but it's not in a way that serves us. It's in a way that can really be very detrimental. And so I believe that when we hope and we push through and we trust the process and we go through the process, then by the time we get on the other end of that, like life is preparing us to carry the weight of the things that we're hoping for, because it is very naive to think that the things that you're hoping for won't require change in you. Like there isn't a gap between like who you are and who you need to be for you to carry the things that you want in life. And I do believe that when there is a period of waiting, when there's a period where you have to be patient, then there's something growing within you in that period. It's never like lost time, even though sometimes it can feel that way. And believe me, even for me, sometimes waiting can feel like a lot of lost time, but I trust and believe that my hope will always translate in the things that I want in a way that serves me. So that said, like that's like the fuzzy, happy, I think, feel good profile of individuals that are brought into our lives. And we can think about like the people who represented hope in our lives, like the people who touched us in a positive way, who had such a huge impact in our lives in the most positive way. And for me, it was like those people who spoke life into me, who spoke belief into me. And it could have been a phrase that they didn't really take seriously, but that I anchored on, and it just gave me the fuel that I needed to push even that last mile. So I want to bring that to you. Like hopefully this is something that's giving you that sense as well. It would be really great if like all you needed to hear was like me saying that like hope is really the anchor that you need to fall back on when nothing else is telling you that what it is that you're looking for is going to translate. Like I don't put so much weight on the physical reality of things, because I know that everything that we experience now is a byproduct of people's vision, of what people believed before it was in existence. And so that's what I believe about my dreams as well. Like, no, it's not a reality. Yeah, the odds might be against me, but so long as I hope and I keep pushing forward in that hope, like I believe that I will attract reality that I want. And I think that that's true for everyone. Next, I want to talk about the people who represent lessons in our life. And again, like I want to just reiterate the point that I think that all of our lives are set up to enable us to align to our highest selves. I think that everything in each and every one of our lives is about finding that inner alignment. And so that is a very spiritual viewpoint. I don't think that we're just like these physical beings and that there's nothing beyond the physical that for us to experience. I think even our thoughts, our desires, our needs, all of those are very spiritual things. And so I think that people come into our lives because there are lessons to enable us to become, to enable us to step into our becoming, to step into the people that we can be, step into that potential. And I think oftentimes we think about potential, we think about becoming, we think about growth, and it feels like this beautiful, happy, serendipitous journey where like there's no challenges and no hardship. But pain has a very significant role in that. I think a lot of like the hard lessons that we've learned shape our becoming. The hard lessons have a role to play in our identity forming. And we can think about the pivotal moments where we promised ourselves we would or we wouldn't be a certain thing because of a painful lesson. And I think that oftentimes we are so caught up in the pain that those lessons create that we don't sit in that pain and allow ourselves to kind of process it, to think about like what the actual lesson is. Like rather than be reactive and make promises and commitments that are not necessarily well placed, like why not think about like what did this person come to teach me? And I think that if people aren't coming to help you, they're coming to teach you something. And I think there are 4 reasons why people come into our lives. And the first one is like people who are trying to help you, who are coming to help you on your journey. And I think that those are the people who represent hope in our lives, and it translates in so many different ways. But second is the people who are here to teach you something. And I think a lot of the key lessons that are worth learning are the lessons that we learn painfully. I actually do not think that pain is a bad thing. And I think that while it's uncomfortable, while it's not fun, pain shapes our character. And people who haven't gone through pain are oftentimes the people who create chaos and who are like causing pain for other people, like in a way that just doesn't make sense. But I think that for those of us who have experienced pain and who give ourselves the opportunity to learn and grow through pain are the people who can take the lessons from that pain to commit to being a better version of ourselves. I think we always have the choice to allow pain to make us or to break us. And I have made a commitment to myself that any painful experience that I deal with in life, I'm going to give myself the opportunity to be better as a byproduct of it. I don't think painful experiences are just because. I think that they are lessons. And even if the lesson is like buried, I want to figure out what that lesson is so that it fuels and it forms my character, because I think more than anything else, like I want to be of good character. It is very important to me to be of good character, to be of sound character. And I think to be of sound character, we have to go through things to give us a sense as to like, hey, like my values, my beliefs, are they aligned to the things that I know about the world around me, the things I know about the world in and of itself, about the impact that I want to create on this world? Or are my values, beliefs in misalignment with that? Like if I want a world where there's harmony, where there's peace, where people love each other, how do my values play into that? And a lot of that will be informed by these people who represent lessons. But if we're so caught up in the pain that we decide to, rather than take that lesson and extract from it value that will help us to attain to, I guess, tap into our potential and align to our highest selves by focusing on compassion and forgiveness, if we then instead choose on resentment and bitterness, and we can just become hateful and miss the lesson completely, and instead turn to bias or turn to dogma or turn to like, generalizations that further create division rather than proximity, So I think that those are very important things to just think about, like how we frame our beliefs about the people around us based on our interactions with like specific individuals, and if whether or not those frames are enabling us to align to our highest selves or doing the absolute opposite. And if it's doing the opposite, like I challenge you to really reflect, to rethink your position on things and think about, like, if I were to play devil's advocate with myself and find like the positive in this really dark situation, like what would that positive be, and how can you have that positivity materialize in your becoming, in your identity, and in your evolving sense of self as well. Now, the third profile of individuals that I think comes into our lives are people who are warnings. And I think that this is when we're really on a path that is not serving us, that is not in our best interest, that might have its perks. I think there are always going to be, I guess, incentives to not be in alignment with our highest selves. I think that people who live lives that are contrary to, I guess, the qualities that one would think are worth pursuing, if people are comfortable not having integrity, if people are radically selfish, if people like to exploit others, like all of these things that some people do they kind of take that course in life, like, and it, involves also like having, I guess, views of the world that are less than, like views of superiority or inferiority, like you kind of play on those beliefs and those views in order to justify some of the things that you do to specific people. I think that those lifestyles will come with warnings, because that's a very destructive path. I think anything that is ill-gotten is quickly removed. Like I don't think that anyone who cheats and who steals and who lies, and even if they seem like they're successful as a byproduct of that, like I think that success is always going to be short-lived, and I would never want to gain anything in life that could be taken away from me. Like that's a very important value of mine, but because I recognize that there is no version of reality that doesn't come with consequences. And I think some people can delude themselves in thinking that they're beyond or above consequence because maybe that's what society has told them. But then society hides the examples where things catch up to you. Like if you are cheating, if you're lying, if you are stealing, if you're trying to exploit other people for your own gain, like that's something that's always going to catch up to you. But before it does, you have warnings. And I think that there are some people who come into our lives who represent a warning about the path that we're on and whether or not we need to pivot. And I think that these are the people that we instantly dislike. And I think that the whole adage around kill the messenger is just so true. Anyone who represents a message that tells you or holds a mirror to you by way of like how you're behaving, how you're showing up, and that it does need to change, like it's catching up to you. I understand thinking like, hey, if I like get rid of the messenger, then maybe like the message itself will be delayed, will be deterred, will be nullified. But that's not true. Like the messenger is just a representation or a signaling of what's to come. And I think that again, like everything in life, I believe is about aligning you to your highest selves, around compelling you to align to your highest selves. And I think that life will give you so many different chances to do that. And I think that when you do meet people who are not subject to the same outcomes as what you have inflicted on other people, like you can't do the same things to them, you can't get away with the same things as them, they're not receptive to intimidation. They're not receptive to like the tactics and the antics that you've done in the past. Like they're not people that you can destroy despite the fact that you've put all of your energy and effort into it. And those people are there to carry a message, and that message is typically a warning that the lifestyle that you're leading has caught up to you. Like your consequences are coming, but now it's like a choice. Like to what extent are these consequences going to impact your life? Are they going to be something that gives you the opportunity to reorient, to repivot, to kind of do right by all of the people that you've done wrong to? Or is it going to be something that completely destroys you and forces you to really reflect on the person that you are and take time to think about the person that you're going to be, or the person that you're even going to have the right to be moving forward, depending on the infractions and the things that you've done in this life. And I think that warnings are people who implicitly, I think they scare you. I think if you have a lifestyle that involves people coming into your lives as warnings, I understand the fear, because if you've lived under this delusion that you're above consequence, you're above the law, that nothing and no one can touch you, and then someone who represents a warning comes, like I can see that being very scary. But I think if you don't deal with the warning, like come down to earth and like really reflect and like change your ways, and I think that like what comes next is not something that you can try to position as not your fault. I think warnings are just so obvious. They're such black and white things that if you choose to ignore the warning, if you choose to like be worse rather than do better, if you choose to just kind of ramp up on the behavior that's brought this warning into your life regardless, then the next person that comes into your life is what I believe the people who represent destruction. And I think a lot of the times when we think destruction, like we think about the cold case files, we think about like police intervention, or we think about just when things just come crumbling down, like Ponzi schemes, or some of those catastrophic events like in the financial markets. Like we think about these historical moments where it was just like everything seemed great, and then the house of cards came crumbling down. And for me, I know that those moments before they happened came with warnings that went ignored. Again, life is about balance, and I think that balance can happen within our lifetimes. Balance can happen across multiple lifetimes. Balance can happen across generations, but there's always going to need to be balance. There's always going to need, like the universe, I believe, is a matrix that checks and balances everything. And I think that when those warnings are ignored, then the balance, the correction is done. And I find it interesting how people will frame the destruction as a mistake that they made, or a glitch in the system, when it was just something that was always going to come to them. Because if you're really bent on not aligning to your highest self and on following a course that is hurtful and destructive to other people and hurtful and destructive to you, then understand that you're attracting destruction into your life, right? And I think that that's true for anyone. Either you attract hope and positivity and alignment into your life based on the frequency that you're emitting because of the actions that you're engaging in, or you're attracting the absolute opposite. And if you're regardless of whether or not you're getting away with it, like just understand, like the longer it takes for destructive to come into your space, like the more destructive it's going to be. Like if life gives you a long roadmap to figure yourself out and to shift and change your ways, and you're just not choosing to, then understand that that's just energy that you're emitting that is inviting the inevitable into your life. And so the inevitable can be hope and positivity, or the inevitable can be destruction, essentially. And so I like to look at life this way, and it gives me the opportunity to really focus on my own role in my life, because I don't think that life happens to us, it happens with us. It helps me hold myself accountable. It helps me cultivate a sense of responsibility for my life and the way that things are going. And it helps me make sense of like the hard things that take place, because I think a lot of the hard things, like for me, I'm very much focused on alignment. I want to be someone who is always trying to stay aligned to my highest selves, regardless of my flaws and the things that I'm working on. And I think that it has brought about so many lessons, and so many of those lessons have been very, very painful, but also so pivotal in my becoming, right? And I would much rather deal with the pain that comes with lessons learned and sit in that pain and recognize how it's shaping my becoming, and be the person who is comfortable being on a destructive path and inviting destruction into my life as a byproduct of that. And I think that lessons can be new beginnings. Like they can be starting all over. They can be, outgrowing the environments, the people, places, and situations that we find ourselves in, but it's always going to be for our benefit, right? Because we're approaching life, we're approaching people with the best of intentions. And I think that intention is everything by way of what we invite into our lives as a byproduct of those intentions and those motivations. And in any case, that was what I wanted to talk about. Just something to put on your radar, something for you to think about. And if you have a perspective on these profiles of individuals, and again, like I do believe that there are more, but for me, these are the four core pivotal roles that I have seen play out in other people's lives, that I have seen play out in my own life, and what I believe they mean, because I do think that everything in life is about aligning to our highest selves. And I think that we need to cultivate a certain sense of self-mastery to do that. And so that's why at Project Purpose, we do provide different courses that focus on that intellectual development and that character development as well, in a setting where you're with like-minded individuals who want to do the same. So we do offer adult programs, and those adult programs focus on cultivating development, growth mindset, clarity, and focus, so that your energy is only ever going to the things that mean the most to you. You're only focusing on that alignment, and making sure that your actions and your beliefs and your values like play into that alignment. And we do also provide programs for children, so cultivating that leadership competency in children. And so at Project Purpose, we believe that leadership is built on 4 core fundamental pillars, especially as children, and that's focusing on cultivating a strong sense of autonomy, self-efficacy, compassion, and self-confidence. So something for everyone in your family, something definitely for you if you're watching. And if you're still here, like, definitely leave a like, follow us. Every follow, every like helps so much. I would love to grow this channel. I would love to have this conversation with more people who are interested in growth and aren't quite sure where to start, or like want to think about the things that I like to talk about, because these are things I think about all the time, and maybe have a conversation about it. I mean, that's all we're here to do, really, is to talk and to influence, talk, and to have those thought-provoking conversations to enforce our growth. In any case, that was it, but definitely not all. Follow us again if you haven't already, and then we look forward to chatting with all of you very soon. We'll talk to you later.